All right, guys, happy Thursday. Um, it's gonna be a little bit different today. So I know yesterday I was outside, but obviously today on Wednesday it's like been raining all day, so I'm inside. And we're gonna mix it up a little bit, and we're gonna have a guest reader. Oh my gosh! And you actually saw her because she was like kind of lurking over my shoulder at the beginning. So Mrs. Smith is going to read to you guys today. She's gonna read. She's read Good Dog before, right? Like a couple of years ago, maybe when it first came out. And so she's going to read you guys chapter 5 today, and then I'll come back on and let you know what we're going to do today. Okay, so just so Mrs. Smith knows what's happening is Brody just decided that he's going back to the real world. So he's leaving the in-between place and he just jumped. So we ended on and Brody he jumped. So he jumped into the canyon and we'll see if he's going to go back to his real world to find his boy Aiden. So I'm going to give Mrs. Smith the book.
Hi, guys. All right, chapter 5. A gust of frigid wind sucked the air from Brody's lungs. He squeezed his eyes shut tight. Tuck trembled beside him. There was a squeezing and a rushing and a feeling like falling. A great coldness closed its fist around him. A coldness that didn't just touch his fur or his skin or even his bones and his heart. It crept into his thoughts, his memories. His whole self tingled, then went numb, then burned. A feeling of being upside down and then inside out and then spinning around. And then stillness. And then the feeling of something cold and wet under his paws. And the sound of a car engine rumbling in the distance and the smell of soil and garbage. He opened his eyes. He blinked and looked around. All he saw was darkness. For a moment he thought that it hadn't worked, that he was stuck somehow, trapped between the worlds. A whimper shook in his throat. But then he looked closer, and shapes began to take form. In the distance, the faint glow of streetlights, a parked car, a great white snowy field, a couple of swings empty and still. He looked up. The moon shone faintly, hidden by dark clouds. The clouds, shoved by the wind, parted. Bright white light flooded down from a moment, revealing the benches and slides and picnic tables standing in paw-deep snow. And he could remember each one. Familiarity. I can't say that. He was familiar. I just lost my place. Sorry, guys. Swept over him as warm a feeling as petting fingers. Where are we? Tuck asked from behind him. We're at the park, he answered, and his tail began to wag. We are at my boy's park. He turned to grin at Tuck and stopped short when he saw him. Whoa! Tuck's eyes were locked on him too, and they were just as wide as Brody's. Yeah, he echoed, whoa. Tuck was glowing. A buttery golden light was sparkling off his fur, and swirling all around him were those same floating firefly lights they had seen when a dog forevered. Oh boy, Brody whispered, just like he said, it's your spirit. Tuck circled him, his tail wagging slow. Yep, you too, buddy. Brody looked down and saw the same glow around his own body, the same drifting lights slowly circling him. And standing there, looking at the wondrous glow of his own soul for the first time, Brody remembered the sound of Aiden laughing. He remembered it from the time they'd played in the snow, but from other times too. An open mouth sound, an eye sparkling sound, a tail wagging sound. Laughing. The sound of a happy heart, right then looking at his own golden fur and glittering clouds of light. Brody felt like laughing. He didn't know how laughter worked, but he knew then what it felt like. Because a soul, it's a beautiful thing to have, and it's a terrible thing to lose. But Brody didn't know that yet. Tuck's nose was waving in the air, sniffing at the night smells. Smell that, Brody? He asked. Brody sniffed. What? Everything, buddy. Just everything. Brody sniffed again and knew what he meant. Up there, where they'd come from, there had been only a few smells, and they were all good and clean and pure. Dirt, grass, water, dogs. But down here, there were so many more. Brody smelled oil and wood and people, lots of people. He smelled car exhaust and cooking food and cat pee and overflowing garbage cans at the park's edge. There were 100 smells, more even, and some were good and some were bad, and they were all mixed together, and his nose lapped at them like a thirsty tongue lapping at water. It wasn't that it smelled better up there. It had definitely smelled better, he thought, but it smelled more. Come on, Tuck said, and his tail was wagging fierce, and his eyes were bright. Brody knew what he was going to say before he even said it. Let's run, Brody. Let's run. Tuck took off, and Brody was right behind him, trying to keep up. They ran through the cloudy night park, two dogs with their souls shining like a firework. That Brody suddenly remembered his boy setting off right there in the park on a hot summer night. And as they ran, more remembering came to him, memories, one after another, rattling into his head. They ran past a metal slide, gigantic and sloping as he remembered. Aiden standing at the very top of the slide, waving his arms for balance, a smile that came and went and came again to his face as he concentrated on not falling, himself nervous and pacing below, whining and circling. Will you catch me, Brody? Will you catch me if I fall? He didn't know the words then, didn't know the meaning of the sound his boy was making, but now he did. Yes. He wanted to bark up at him. Yes, Aiden, I will catch you. They lapped past the picnic table, ducking to cut the corner close and scoot under the bench, and he remembered. Him and Aiden huddled together under the table while a heavy gray rain fell on the world around them. It drummed on the table above them and plopped in puddles around them and filled the air with its smell and its song. He was happy and wagging, loving the mud and the wetness and the being close with Aiden. But then he saw the fear on Aiden's face, saw his paleness in his wide eyes. He was looking down at his clothes, hopeless, muddy. Oh man, he was saying over and over again, a tremble in his voice that had stilled Brody's tail. I'm going to be in so much trouble. Oh man, Brody licked his hand, licked his face, licked his ear, trying to help, but failing. They circled a rusty old merry-go-round, still and silent, and he remembered Aiden lifting him onto it, pushing him toward the middle, his claws clanking on the scratched-up metal. Ready? His voice already riffled with laughter. Aiden running, gripping the merry-go-round faster, and then faster, taking it from a rumble to a squeak to a squeal, and then jumping up onto it with Brody, breathless and laughing. Aiden's arm tight around him as they watched the world spin and blur around them, and Brody was happy, even though his paw slid and scraped for balance and his stomach somersaulted, because when he was with Aiden, and Aiden was with him, the world could spin as crazy as it wanted, and he knew they'd never fall off. And then out of nowhere, a memory that almost made him stumble and stop. Darkness. Summer heat. Him and Aiden crouched in the thickest part of the biggest bunch of bushes in the park, under the trees where the park went wild, hiding. Aiden's arms around him so tight he could barely breathe. Aiden was sobbing and choking and panting. The smell of tears, the taste of blood, his broken voice. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. I love you, Brody. I love you, Brody. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. I love you, Brody. Over and over and over. Him being held too tight for too long and his muscles wanting so badly to shake free, to break loose, to move, but not doing it, staying there, tight with his boy, knowing that Aiden needed that, knowing that Aiden needed him. He stopped running. He looked over to the trees to where that memory lived. Tuck noticed and stopped, circled back, came up to him slow. Brody? Brody looked at him. I need to find him now. I need to know he's okay. Tuck's run happy, wagging slowed, but he stepped up to snuffle encouraging at Brody's ear. All right, that's what we're here for, right? Lead the way, buddy. Brody sniffed at the air, looking for a memory of which way to go. Tuck followed him through the snow to the sidewalk at the park's edge. It was lit here, and there were yellow circles of light from streetlights. A car rolled slowly by, its taillights glowing red. Snow was pushed together in dirty piles along the side of the street, but the road itself, the sidewalk, was bare. The concrete sparkled with a thin layer of icy frost. He looked up the street one way, sniffing the air and eyeing the houses. Most had porch lights on and lit up windows. Some were decorated with strings of colored lights along their roofs. Christmas. The word came into his mind, and with it a scatter shot of half memories. A crinkle of paper being ripped, the crisp scent of a pine tree, the excited eyes of a boy he loved. He looked the other way. It was darker that way. Some of the house looked empty, lifeless. A few of the lots between the houses were vacant, with weeds and litter poking up through the snow. This way, he said, starting toward the darker houses. He's this way. They trotted up the sidewalk, their paws making the sound of the icy pavement. Brody looked at the houses as they passed, searching for something familiar. Are we close? Tuck asked, paddling along cheerfully at his side. Kind of, I think. Maybe? Oh, good. I guess. The house got more and more run down as they traveled. There were fewer Christmas lights. Some of the fences were falling down, their paint peeling. Dark porches were cluttered with piles of junk. The sound of angry voices wafted out of the half-open doors. Ahead, a street light flickered. A person leaned against a light post, bundled up in a thick coat. A sharp smell hit Brody's nose. A familiar smell. Cigarette. He knew that smell. It was all tied up with Aiden, with the house that he was looking for. As they got closer to the man, Tuck suddenly picked up his pace and got to wagging. Brody looked up and saw why. The smoking man had a dog, tied to a leash, sitting on the sidewalk next to him. Tuck barked a friendly hello kind of bark, but the other dog ignored him. He barked again, and the other dog didn't even twitch an ear. They got to the corner, and Tuck ran right up to that other dog, sniffing and wagging his tail, but the other dog did nothing. Tuck barked. He growled. He whined. Hey, he shouted. Nothing. What's wrong with this guy? Tuck, I don't think... But before Brody could finish, Tuck jumped forward to nudge the dog with his nose. But Tuck didn't nudge him. He didn't even touch him. His nose went right through the dog like he wasn't even there, and then Tuck stood there with his whole head stuck inside the other dog. He pulled it out real quick and stumbled away, his tail between his legs. Finally, the other dog responded. He shook his head like a fly was in his ear and whined and looked around. But he looked right past Tuck and Brody, or really right through them. Brody saw the dog's eyes look at him, and there was nothing there, not a flicker of understanding. What just happened? Tuck asked, backing away, his fur up and his eyes on the dog. The angel warned us, Tuck. We're spirits now, remember? He can't see us or hear us. Brody stepped right up to the dog so close that their nose Noses were a whisker's length apart. He barked. Then he looked up at the man who was puffing his cigarette. Ugh, and looking at something in his hand. Phone, his mind said, his face bored and tired. People can't either, I guess. Tuck crept closer, close enough to sniff at the dog. Weird, he said. He stretched a paw forward and timidly stuck it into the dog. It passed right through him. Tuck's tail started to wag again. He lunged forward and stuck his head into the dog, then jumped back. Besides another shiver, the other dog didn't move. Tuck's tail wagged harder. He stuck his head farther in and kept it there for a moment, then jerked it out again. This is crazy. Then his tail stopped wagging and his ears went down. Wait, he said. If we can't touch stuff, do you think that means we can't eat? His voice was dead serious. Who cares? Who cares? Are you kidding me? Did you even hear my question? We're dead, Tuck. Who cares if we can't eat? Tuck turned an angry circle. Come on, buddy. Getting the chance to eat again was half the reason I came back in the first place. I agree with that one. I thought you came back to help me, Brody pointed out, and to move on forever. Oh, yeah, sure, Tuck said quickly, looking away. That stuff too. Mostly, but come on, buddy. Eating? Yeah, I know. It's your favorite thing in the world, but we've got bigger stuff to deal with than your appetite. Let's go. Brody started off again, and Tuck reluctantly followed, leaving the smoking man and his dog behind as they continued across the street to the next block. Brody started off again, and Tuck just read that. They passed a woman walking the other way, and Tuck barked at her and jumped right through her, wagging his tail. He passed through her like she was nothing but a cloud. She kept walking, but pulled her ratty jacket tighter around her shoulders. This is amazing, he said, dancing in a circle. You gotta try it, buddy. Maybe later, Brody said, not slowing down. We're getting closer. I can feel it. They came to the end of another block. The street light there was broken, leaving the corner in darkness. Brody looked one way, then the other. The street was quiet. It was all parked cars and closed doors and city-stained snow. The breeze brought a faint parade of smells to his nose. This is it, he said, his tail going to full, rump, swinging wag. This is the street. This is where we... The words stuck in his throat, and he started over. This is where he lives, right down here. I'm sure of it. Yeah? All right, let's go find your boy then. And, hey, look at those mutts. Brody looked to where Tuck was looking, up the street, in the direction that they'd been walking. A group of dogs, 4 of them, were lying around on the sidewalk under a streetlight, half a block ahead. Wanna go stick your head in 'em? Nah, Tuck, come on, we're so close. All right, no time for fun. Got it, buddy. He was still standing facing the distant dogs. You mutts are lucky, he shouted in their direction, then barked, one loud, cheerful bark. And those dogs down there who shouldn't have been able to see them or hear them? Well, when Tuck barked, something crazy happened. All their heads, all 4 of those dogs' heads snapped to look up. Brody didn't know why, but when those dogs turned their heads toward him, his skin went ice cold and his tail lost any wag that it had. The next chapter is chapter 6. Mr. Smith.
Thanks, Mrs. Smith, for reading. That was a super fun chapter, right? So we'll see what next time why those 4 dogs are able to hear them, but nobody else really is. So today, and I know this video is a little bit long, but today you're going to watch a couple of videos. So one is a YouTube video, one is a video of me teaching. So it'll be me talking about your introductions. There'll be a couple other links. So your sample introduction, we'll be able to see some other student examples. And then you're going to actually create your introduction in Google Classroom. Okay, so you'll just create a doc and then you'll type in your introduction based on the opinion and the 3 reasons that you gave me yesterday, and then the videos on Thursday will explain why. So have an awesome day. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.